Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and turn to your notes for the Vietnam War. We're going to continue with the Vietnam War. And actually, for this particular unit, the Vietnam War, we're going to kind of like, I'll probably give you a little bit of an idea of kind of where it's going. Actually, I already did. Did we win? No. No, we kind of leave. Yeah, we're like, can we get out of that war? It was a really big issue in the 1968 presidential election. And the guy who won, President Nixon, in a close race, his policy was, we need to get out. And ultimately, by the end of his first term and into the second term, we would get out. Okay? So, before we get into that, some important information for you. Oh, look, I just gave you a study guide. Yes, you have a quiz. In fact, in this unit, I've got two quizzes for you. Chapter 39 and Chapter 40. I've got it written up on the board already. Your quiz on Chapter 39 for you, blue team, is on Thursday of the week we come back, Thursday the 22nd. Okay? So you got plenty of time to get ready for that. It's a 20-point quiz. And deals with lots of things going on in the Kennedy administration. And let me see, we've got Vietnam War going on there, Cuban Missile Crisis. We've got some civil rights stuff going on there as well. The 1968 election is very, very prominent in that particular chapter. And then we'll have another chapter after that. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, I can do that as well. I'll try to remember as well, because I know sometimes some of you guys rely on that because it jumps up and so forth. And as well, some of the people in the other class are like, oh gosh, it's so easy to do it at home and da-da-da. Because the at-home folks are going to be doing like a couple of sentences for each of the items on there. And you're like, well, that's a lot of work. If you want to, I recommend do a couple of sentences. Like, for example, if you want to make sure to get the extra credit or the retake opportunity, if you fall short, like you get 18 out of 20 or something like that. If you do two sentences on each of the points, not only will that help you get ready for the quiz, you've got that already to turn in for the retake. Does that make sense? Does it? Yes. Okay, and I think I had that in like the syllabus and so forth that I gave you, but I don't mind answering. Hopefully we'll get through all the Cold War by the end of the semester. That's my goal. I think we're going to be on track to do that. So next semester, we will focus on the paper one topic, conflict and intervention. And it's sort of, it covers like right after the Cold War period, which is why we do it then. Paper one's very doable. So we'll be looking at, ready? Balkans and Kosovo. Okay, so the fall apart of Yugoslavia and Kosovo. And actually before that, we'll do, because it happens a little bit chronologically before that, we'll do the situation in Rwanda. So two very, very difficult things in history on that. Okay, does that make sense, Jack? And so I think we'll have plenty of time to do that. And then one of the units, I don't even know if we're going to even bother doing that necessarily, given that we don't start second semester until like late January. Your exam schedule still starts in May, and I want to be able to have all of April to calibrate you guys so that you will all be, Jack, you will be super confident. How many of you guys are going to be confident going into the IB history exams coming in May? That you know how to do the essays, that you're good calibrated writers. You don't think I can get you there? Really? Oh, such lack of faith. Jack, do you have confidence that I can help you get there? Yes. Yes, he says, with... Yeah, because I know some of you guys are like, I don't know, is it going to be okay, and so forth. One unit, I think, is going to be going away. The authoritarian unit that I've done in the past, like right before April, I don't think we necessarily have to do that. Why? Jack, why are we not as worried about paper two topics and getting lots and lots of information on that? Exactly. You only have to answer one question. That went from an hour and a half writing session of 2 essays to a 45-minute session of 1 essay. And you'll pick among 4 choices. There'll be 2 about 20th century wars, and there'll be 2 about the Cold War, and you'll pick your favorite question. And that'll be it. Yeah, no, actually, it's really nice that way. Oh, when you looked at it on paper 3, because there's only going to be 2 questions there. Okay? So I'm still feeling real confident in where you're going. Cold War, all the way up until the cold months, including December and January. Yes? Are we good, Daniel? Okay. Yeah, okay. And paper, your IA and things like that and so forth. Okay, all right. Okay, most of you guys are in really, really good shape on that. And actually, the ones that have some work to do and so forth, it's very doable. It's very doable. It's gonna be good. All right? And I'm not talking like I'm a spokesperson, bless you, for somebody who's like trying to, have you ever heard of Baghdad Bob? During the last war with the United States and Iraq, Baghdad Bob was referred to by the American Press Corps. He was the spokesperson for the Saudi government, and he would get on television and say, things are great, things are awesome, and explosions are going off in the back. No, things were not very great and so forth. But I can tell you, we're on good track. Okay? All right. So, be ready for the quiz coming up on the, whatever I said, the 22nd. Okay? And at-home folks will have until like the 23rd to get that assignment done and turned in to me. Okay? All right. Questions? Okay? Should we get back into the Vietnam War? All right, let's bring it. Let us bring it. Breathe deep. Okay. Where last we left off, Ellie, what is the name of the country that is run by communists like Ho Chi Minh in Southeast Asia? Which Vietnam? Thank you very much. North Vietnam. Okay. Tara, what is the name of the country that is trying to fight off North Vietnam and has a or an anti-communist government that's sort of democratic and the United States supports? South Vietnam, okay. Daniel, if you are in the North Vietnam and you're trying to help overthrow the South Vietnam government, what is the name of the organization, the group of people that you're providing military support to, and they're going down there and infiltrating South Vietnam? The Soviet Union is helping them as well, okay? Raise your hand if you can tell me, what is the name of that organization? Viet Cong. Do you remember the Viet Cong? Yeah, so the Viet Cong. So like, oh, you did. Yes, exactly. So it's like, and I always have to figure this out. It's like, when the United States soldiers are there, who are they fighting against? Well, you got sometimes you'll hear them talking because you get like veterans and say, we're fighting the NVA, and sometimes we fight the VC. And you're like, what? North Vietnamese Army, regulars, Viet Cong, VC. Which of them, Sage, you're more likely to be in uniform? Yeah, the North Vietnamese Army. Okay? So a lot of this is going to be guerrilla warfare going on and creating all kinds of problems for the government of South Vietnam. Okay, Trenton, who is the leader of the government of South Vietnam in the early 1960s? And if you're not sure about how to pronounce it, go ahead and spell it. Yes, okay. President Diem. Okay, President Diem. All right. And so he's having all kinds of problems because his officials in the countryside are getting attacked by the Viet Cong, and they're like, what are we going to do? This is not good. Looking to the America to step in. I don't know, Melody, why wouldn't France step in at that point? Yeah, they got beaten. They're kind of like, if you look actually at that same time, what was going on in France in the late 50s and early 60s that they're like, man, we got enough problems going on here. We don't want to get involved in Vietnam anymore. Do you remember, Jacob? What country, what battle, or what war were they involved in that President de Gaulle was ultimately going, yeah, let's get out of here too? I'll give you a clue. The continent of Africa. I'll give you another clue. It starts with an A. I'll give you another clue. Starts with an A-L. And these guys are jeering at you. It doesn't rhyme with Algeria. It sounds like Algeria. Yeah, it's Algeria, yeah. So as you look in the 1950s and early 60s, France is like, let's get, yeah. So the United States steps in. Write this down. Ready? Here we go. President Kennedy, Mr. President Kennedy, going to stand up to the Soviets. Going to stand up to them in the Cuban situation. Don't want to have their missiles and so forth there. Make sure you put this down. He says, we're going to help you out, South Vietnam. We're going to help you out. We're going to help your military perform better. How can we do that? Because we got smart people in our country, and we got smart people in our military. Write it down if you don't have it already. How many? I think you did. I think we did this one. How many military advisors did we send over from the United States military to help out? 16,000. So that's your initial U.S. military involvement. And one of the things they discover is this is a lot of work going on here. How many of you guys have ever sought the assistance of, let's say, I don't know, somebody older in your family to work on something, and then they came in, and after a while, they kind of like took it over because they could do a better job? I mean, I remember like my older sister, she had 6 younger siblings, and sometimes she'd look and go, man, you're getting it all messed up. And she'd just push you aside. Put this down. Over the course of, say, the next 6, 7 years, the United States is going to take over more involvement, direct involvement, in fighting the war. And part of the reason is because the presidents, and I mean Kennedy, and then also Johnson in particular, who comes after Kennedy, when Kennedy is assassinated in 1963, they're going to look and going, the South Vietnamese military is not getting it done. Write it down. They're not getting it done. Okay? It's not working out. I mean, it's going to be very, very hard. I mean, it's like, what's the problem with the South Vietnamese government? 1, corrupt. 2, doesn't seem to have a lot of support among the people living out in the area. Oh, and here's a really bad one. Oh, and as a sign of that, this is where we left off. As a sign of that, you get sort of a pulse about how things are going in the country. Buddhist monks. This is actually a tradition. You're like, this is an interesting political tradition within Buddhism over many years. It's not the first time this has happened, but if Buddhist monks look at the situation in a country and decide that it is not going very well, they don't necessarily always like grab up weapons and go to war. Okay? Although the Chinese Communist government will accuse Tibetan Buddhist monks of doing exactly that. Some do, others don't. Nevertheless, what is one of the ways that they show that they're dissatisfied with what's going on? They light themselves on fire. It is like saying, I have no attachment necessarily to my life, but I'm going to use my life as a way of bringing attention to the bad stuff that's going on so that hopefully these bad things will get fixed. It's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting tradition. And if you look at that, it's like, wow, you see a Buddhist monk go to a public place, douse himself, sit in a position, like a praying position, douse himself with gasoline, and light himself on fire. And that happens several times in South Vietnam, and it makes the government even less popular. Yes, Daniel? Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we'll talk about that some more. That's basically the supply route. You can see it here on this map. You see like the red line, the red arrows and so forth going through? That's the supply route from North Vietnam through neutral countries, Laos and Cambodia. And it's almost like they don't even... It's not like they're like trying to help one side or the other. It's like they just don't have enough control over their own territory to prevent that from taking place. So you get all this supply of military equipment and Viet Cong and actually North Vietnamese soldiers as well coming through, particularly Cambodia, and then infiltrating the entire western border of South Vietnam. Got that? That's the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That's what Americans and so forth will call it because it's obviously associated with Ho Chi Minh, North Vietnamese leader. Got that? Does that make sense? Okay. 1963, an interesting thing happens. There's a lot of irony in this and so forth. Generals in the South Vietnamese military are looking and they're not really happy with the civilian leader, President Diem. And they've got what they think is a solution to this problem of a presidential leader who is corrupt, inept, just not getting the job done. What do you suppose their solution is? Kill him, yeah. A military coup. I mean, it's like, wow, this used to be a French colony. Have the French ever been involved in an attempted military? Yes, right? I mean, it's not unheard of. In fact, it happens a lot in the newly independent countries of Africa. We saw it take place in the Congo, that unit that we just, thing that we just talked about. So, the message gets out that the military is going to overthrow Diem. Apparently, word gets to the White House. And when President Kennedy hears it, he doesn't necessarily say yes or no. But what does that mean? I mean, if you came to your parents with some idea of doing something pretty radical, like, getting rid of the president and assassinating him and overthrowing him or so forth, what would you expect your parents to say? If they don't say no, what does that mean? Well, apparently, write this down, November 1st, 1963. Apparently, the military felt like they got kind of the go-ahead from Kennedy, because Kennedy was getting kind of frustrated that Diem didn't seem to be doing a very good job. It's like, I sent you a bunch of military advisors. Why aren't you getting the job done? So the generals took that as a, okay, that if they took out the president, that Kennedy would be able to work with them as the next government in there. And so, of course, they deny that they supported it. The president of the United States denies that they supported it. But Diem and his brother are going to be assassinated. And then you're going to get military leaders in charge. And actually, write this down. Throughout the duration of the rest of the war, beginning in 1963 all the way until Vietnam falls in, 1975, you're going to have a series of not real strong governments. I mean, they'll bring democracy back in a little bit here, and they'll have elections and so forth. But I mean, one of the most difficult things for a government to have to do is to fight a war. And if you're not fighting it successfully, that doesn't look very good on you, does it? I mean, if Abraham Lincoln was losing the Civil War in the presidential election of 1864, he would have lost. I mean, he would have been defeated. So, we've got South Vietnamese leaders having a real hard time. Ironically, South Vietnamese leader killed early November 1963. Who's killed November 22nd, 1963? Who's killed November 22nd, 1963? I'll give you a clue. It's in Dallas, Texas. It is John F. Kennedy, yeah. And of course, then I'm not even going to get all the conspiracy theories and so forth in there. He is shot and killed by a guy in a building looking down with a sniper, and and this was Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a Marine, and he knew how to fire a gun, and he shot it. He was sympathetic to the Cubans and so forth, didn't like what President Kennedy had done with the Cubans, and spent some time in the Soviet Union, blah, 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 blah. Before we could actually have lots and lots of talking with him, he was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, who was really mad that Lee Harvey Oswald had killed President Kennedy. In any event, write it down. Literally, the oath of office, I think it was in Air Force One, and Jackie Kennedy, the First Lady, was still standing there with the blood-soaked outfit that she was wearing when her husband was shot next to her during a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Lyndon B. Johnson, Vice President, sworn in as President of the United States. The President is dead. All good health to the new President. Lyndon Baines Johnson now takes over as President of the United States. By the way, write this down, 1964, when he runs for election as president in his own right, 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson wins an electoral landslide. And you want to get a sense of what a landslide is? That was the last time Idaho supported a Democrat for president of the United States. All of Idaho's 4 electoral votes went to Lyndon Baines Johnson. Okay? Some of you guys might remember in government class, that was the election where Johnson accused the Republican candidate Goldwater of being like itchy finger on the trigger, and would be likely to like blow up the world with nuclear weapons. Diem was killed. Diem and his brother, the South Vietnamese president, killed in a military coup. Okay? All right. So now Lyndon Baines Johnson comes in. From Texas, had a very successful career as a majority leader in Texas. I mean, give Johnson some credit. He was salty in the tongue, and he can get pretty irascible and so forth. But if you want to get the civil rights legislation through, he got it through. The Voting Rights Act, he got it through. He knew how to get votes here, there, twisting arms and cajoling and so forth. He was a real legislative manipulator, maneuver. I don't want to say well, actually, manipulator is also true. I mean, he got through Medicare. He got through Medicaid. He got through all kinds of different programs as president. Okay? Not getting just votes from among Democrats, like the civil rights stuff. He couldn't count on Southern Democrats necessarily, but he got votes in Congress, in the House, and the Senate from Republicans as well. Okay? So in some sense, you could say, write this down, Johnson had a successful presidency. But, also write this down, he did not run for re-election in 1968. Or at least he started it out, but then he ultimately dropped it. He's like, this job is just not working out. And what was the most difficult thing? The Vietnam War. Yeah. He started to run in 1968, but then like partway through, he dropped out. Okay? And then his vice president ended up getting the nomination, Hubert Humphrey, but he did not win. The winner in 1968 is going to be Richard Nixon. More on that here in a moment. But let's talk about Lyndon Baines Johnson. Write this down. He felt very strongly he did not want to be a U.S. president that had a war lost on his watch. So he's going to do everything he can to win that war. Yes? Yes. He dropped out in 68. No. Think of it this way. Well, here's the deal. The Constitution says you can't serve more than 10. Mostly, when people think about it, it's like an 8-year limit in the sense that two full terms of 4 years. That's 8, right? The actual words of the Constitution say, the amendment, say you can't serve more than 10 years. And because he got the last, year and a month or so of Kennedy's term, that wouldn't have exceeded it. Good question, though. Okay? Yeah. All right. So, what's his goal? What is Johnson's goal? Win the war. Write this down. Win the war. So a lot of people historically don't think of Kennedy as being like Mr. Expand the United States involvement in the Vietnam War. Interesting question. If Kennedy hadn't been shot and killed, would he also have done what Johnson did? And that is put more troops in the fight in South Vietnam. Some people are like, no, he would have never done that. In fact, there's a conspiracy theory that, in fact, Johnson and the Defense Department and the CIA were behind the killing of Kennedy because Kennedy was going to pull the troops out of Vietnam. Exactly. I mean, there's a whole movie. It's called JFK by Oliver Stone. And anyway, if you want to get into Kennedy's conspiracy, I mean, that is like the penultimate of conspiracy theories and so forth that are out there. Okay? And interesting stuff. But we don't know what Kennedy's policy would have been. Perhaps it would have been to increase military involvement. All we do know is, write this down, the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, who Johnson inherited from Kennedy, and he kept him on for quite some time. You got Robert McNamara. And then the top general that's going to be in charge of that particular area, William Westmoreland, they, along with Johnson, are like, get this thing done. Get it done. More troops. More troops. And we have a particular event that takes place in history, and Congress is going to look and go, all right, we agree with you, President Johnson. Let's send in more troops. You ready? August 1964 is when the USS Maddox was hit by North Vietnamese fire. It's a U.S. ship, obviously, USS Maddox, and it was operating in an area near Vietnam, near North Vietnam, called the Gulf of Tonkin. All right, so we had a U.S. naval vessel in patrol off the coast of North Vietnam, and reports back that they have been attacked by the North Vietnamese. So the North Vietnamese are attacking U.S. military Interests. Maddox. I think I've got that in your handout, I believe. No, Maddox. Okay? What's going to come out of that is what is referred to, and this is in your notes, as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. It's not an official declaration of war by the United States against North Vietnam, but it acts as such. August 1964. Okay? So this is still during the remnant of Kennedy's first term. Johnson is president. Johnson looks at the situation, goes to Congress and says, I want a resolution. This is how they do these things nowadays, it seems like, with presidents. Bless you. I want a resolution. I want Congress to support the use of military force. I mean, question for you. When was the last time the United States declared war on a country officially? World War II, yeah, it was World War II. Every other military involvement since then, presidents have gone forward almost without exception. We'll get a little bit of an exception later on with Bill Clinton when he drops bombs on the Serbs, but that's like in the 1990s. Doesn't go to Congress. He's like, hey, we don't got boots on the ground, but anyway. Johnson knows he wants to send in more troops, so he wants Congress to back it up. And Congress votes yes on the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, giving the president the authority, the ability to send over troops, to spend money on more military involvement there. Does that make sense? All right? So, I mean, how long is that Gulf of Tonkin resolution going to be in effect? Pretty much for the duration, as long as presidents are willing to continue sending in troops. The other bookend at the Vietnam War, make a note of this. When the Vietnam War becomes so unpopular in the United States, Congress is not going to support that. You'll hear me say at the very end, remember when we reach a peace agreement with North Vietnam, and they promise not to attack, and we pull our troops out, and then they attack? Our president at that time was President Ford. He's like, man, I'm going back in. And Congress says, no, we don't support that anymore. In 1975, they don't support that anymore. They don't support the United States being involved in a fight in Vietnam. Been there, done that, say the United States Congress. Doesn't matter that the president is willing to send in troops. Nope. Was Congress and the president willing to send in troops in 1964? Yes. Okay, this is the early stage of the war and the U.S. involvement. Okay? And we had our hands full. And we will discover this going in. We're pretty confident going in. We're like, man, if we got the whole U.S. military apparatus and airplanes, I mean, man, we won World War II on two fronts. We can do this. We can do this. Right? In spite of the advice given by, who's it, Vincini and the Princess Bride? You guys know Vincini and the Princess Bride? Right? There's two things, right? Never get into a thing where a Sicilian, where death is on the line. What was his other phrase? Never get involved in a land war in Asia. Well, there's advice to President Johnson. I guess he didn't hear Vincini, but I don't know. Vincini ended up dead in that movie too. So who knows? Yes, my name is Amiga Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Yeah, the guy. Yeah, Vincini was there. I was like, that's inconceivable. Anyway, so. Yeah, I know, it was great. So a land war in Asia. The United States, write this down, gets involved in a land war in Asia. It doesn't work out so well. Okay, so anyway. And part of the yes, Daniel? What kept who from using the Navy? We did use the Navy. Why didn't we win? Let's get into the question of why didn't we win? Let's look at the particulars of why did we not have a positive outcome ultimately in the Vietnam War. You ready? Let's get into that. First, North Vietnam was absolutely, totally set on winning this conflict. They figured, hey, we beat the French. Now we can, they looked at the South Vietnamese government. They're like, oh, those guys are corrupt and they're inept and they don't have a lot of support from the people. Oh, now the Americans are coming in and they think that they can get the job done because, they're like the #1 superpower in the world. But here's what the North Vietnamese feel like, and their supporters in the South. We're dedicated. We are willing to go through a lot of hardship in order to win this thing. They had, put this down, 170,000 Viet Cong. That's not including the North Vietnamese regular military. And they were operating in and across into South Vietnam. Now, let's just look at this sort of topographically, climate-wise. How can they just move so many people and like the United States can't see where they're coming and going? It's tropical rainforest. A lot of that is tropical rainforest. There is a lot of plant life down there. Okay? And of course at nighttime you've got darkness and plant life that is helping conceal the movement of military. Yes? 170,000. Okay? 170,000. Yes? No, 3 million dead overall at the end of the fight. Okay, that was not just, and most of those, I think I mentioned too, hopefully, most of those are going to be Vietnamese people. It's like the Korean War. Most of the people who die in the Korean War are Koreans. Yeah, 3 million. Yeah. So if you look at, if you kind of broke it out in there, who pays the highest price? Vietnamese people. Okay? And this is going to be really, really, really tough. Here's one thing the United States does to try and like make it harder for the enemy to hide among the trees. We've got chemistry on our side. Write this down. What is the chemical substance that you can drop to defoliate and get rid of lots and lots of like plant life and leaves and things that people can hide under? Agent Orange. Write that down. Agent Orange. It's a nasty substance. Right? You do not want to breathe that in. But it defoliates, jungle area. And of course, if you're the United States military and you go into areas that Agent Orange has been involved in, you discover later on that you're going to have complications with breathing, respiratory illnesses. Later, much later, the United States government's like, oh yeah, oops, sorry, here's some compensation for United States military personnel who suffered breathing difficulties as a result of fighting in the war and getting Agent Orange in. All right, so they give compensation. My father-in-law, I think I mentioned, served several tours of duty in the United States Marine Corps in Vietnam. He smoked, but a big chunk of his difficulty in breathing was from Agent Orange. And the United States government provided compensation. I don't know why they call it Agent Orange. I imagine there's something orange about it. Yeah, but it's kind of nasty. Think of that as a little bit different. I mean, because you drop that and you're like, oh, wow, the leaves are going to die. Agent. Not Asian. No, I mean, that's fair, because Asian, it's like Asian agent. It's like, what did you just say? Yes, agent. Another thing we dropped, and this actually would be, it would defoliate, but if you were actually in the tree, you'd be dead too. Napalm. The French had used it actually. It's like gelatin gasoline. And when it lands on things, it burns. Yeah, there's the Agent Orange. There we go. I see a picture of Agent Orange being dropped, and it creates like this orange hue. Yeah. What? Napalm. Napalm. Napalm is like gelatin, and when it lands, it's just like, phew. So like if you're like, here's the deal. You're like, okay, we see that the enemy is operating somewhere over there and so forth, and like you call out to a naval ship and you call in for an airstrike. They come in with the airstrike and so forth. Sometimes they got regular bombs and so forth. Sometimes they just got tanks full of napalm, and they fly over the precise coordinates, we hope, of where the enemy is, and hopefully not anybody else. And then you drop the napalm and whoo, it comes up in a big, huge fire. You'll see this in the video when you watch the video. Just big, huge fire. Sucks if you happen to be like a villager nearby, one of the most famous pictures from the Vietnam War. And I believe it was a girl that got some of that stuff on her, and it was burning, and so she like tore off all her clothes, and she's running. She's like 11 years old or something. And there's like a AP photographer takes a picture of her running through the streets, screaming, crying, naked. So these are the images. Write this down. The war was ugly. And especially for the Vietnamese themselves, right? Because it's like, what can you do? The Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese, are infiltrating in the villages. We took a page from what the French did in the war in Algeria. Or I should say we and the South Vietnamese government. One of the things we decided to do is just like, well, if we can't tell who in the village is with us or against us, let's just sort of confine them all. Is that going to work? No, I mean, ultimately not. The goal is to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese people. It's not working so well. As the war goes on, unfortunately, it gets harder to determine, again, who is with you and who is against. And the harder you try, sometimes the worse it becomes. Because if you send in the United States, let's say, you got helicopters and they get shot at from some village. So the helicopters come down to the village. By the time they land, they're looking around going, where's the enemy? Sometimes the enemy is like a little kid who like walks by and throws a grenade and so forth at a U.S. service personnel. You're like, oh, I guess the little kids are sometimes the enemy. Sometimes it's a girl. Could girls be the enemy? Do girls know how to fight? When they fight like girls? That's like, when they fight like girls, that's like, I mean, it's like, who is your enemy? So we would have like Lieutenant Calley, who was the United States military, went into a village, My Lai, M-A-M-Y, and I think it was M-Y and then L-A-I. It was a little village, and he was like fed up with he's like, I can't trust any of you guys. And he starts lining up old men and women and kids and so forth, and just like having them shot. What? Is that going to work? Well, it's like if this was Stalin running the war, you go like, well, you can't differentiate between a dead person and an enemy and so forth. They're all dead. That's against the rules of war. Oh, and by the way, write this down. The United States war correspondents are reporting back on it, and also it's against the rules of war, and so like that lieutenant is going to run into all kinds of court-martial difficulties and so forth. You get that? Yes. They're supposed to. The rules of war, international agreements come together, like after World War I, remember we talked about that, or like, oh, let's not use mustard gas on people. So the countries come together and say, let's not use that, and sign. So, what do you do to a country that actually uses those kinds of things against people? Next semester, when we talk about what happens in Rwanda and in Serbia and so forth, we'll see some of those rules of war being enforced against some of the folks that break them, right? We're responsible for enforcing those rules of war against our own personnel, but, I mean, are the other side necessarily always following them to a T? No. I mean, they're not supposed to be going into villages and killing innocent civilians, but then, of course, we're not supposed to be doing that either. It makes it very difficult. This is guerrilla warfare. It makes it very difficult to fight. And for the North Vietnamese, write this down. Their goal is to drag it out, make it really hard for the Americans, because the American military operation is taking place within the context of an open democratic society. So these stories are being reported back to the United States. And the more stories that include things like atrocities or difficulties or like, how are we going to win this thing, the more stories you get like that back in the United States, the less support for the war. You got that? And the less support for the war, the more you get like young people, particularly men who are being drafted and who go over to fight, they're organizing protests. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, when would you, against somebody. I mean, when is an appropriate time to use mustard gas against somebody? Yeah. If you accidentally make mustard gas, what kind of chemistry set are you using? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I mean, there'll be different circumstances. You might have to deal with the local law enforcement if you make some of that stuff in your, in your kitchen. If you do it as a country and you use it against an enemy, then you might have the United Nations on your case. Okay? Wait for next semester. Yeah, actually, after World War II, what happened to leading Nazis and what happened to leading Japanese folks? Yeah, they were punished. Okay? All right. So, Rolling Thunder, write this down. Rolling Thunder. One of the ways that the United States figures that they could really hit the North Vietnamese hard, write this down. Rolling Thunder. That is the policy of the United States. Bomb them. Just bomb them. Bomb. Air bases from South Vietnam. ships, aircraft carriers off the coast of North Vietnam. We send them in, boom, boom, they're flying way up high, dropping. Oh my gosh, I think the video points out that I think we dropped more bombs in North Vietnam during the Vietnam War than we did combined in World War II. Something along those lines. I don't think I'm too far off on that. I think I'm quoting that correctly. But here's the deal. I mean, you turn parts of North Vietnam into a cratered mess, but do you win the war? No. Some people are suggesting, nuke them. Just nuke them. What do you think about the United States as a policy just to go ahead and drop nuclear weapons? I mean, well, and here's one thing. Write this down as well. Some of the things is like, well, let's bomb right where the Soviets have their ships and they're unloading to provide supplies for the North Vietnamese. Write this down. Johnson's like, no, don't get near those Soviet ships. I don't want to have a nuclear war, he says. And so people will characterize U.S. military operations as getting into a fight, so-called, with one hand tied behind your back. Now, maybe that's not an accurate characterization because we do send in a lot of military apparatus. We don't send in nuclear weapons, and we don't hit the Soviets who are providing the supply ships and so forth. Haiphong Harbor is right near Hanoi. That's right on the coast. That is where a lot of Soviet ships are coming in, and we're very careful not to hit them. But boy, oh boy, we hit Hanoi hard. But I mean, eventually, like in the areas outside of Hanoi, you look at it, it's like, well, I see lots of craters in rice paddies. Is that really turning the tide? Yeah. Who won? North Vietnam. We'll talk about what happens to the South Vietnamese when North Vietnam wins. Do you think North Vietnam would like the United States to pay today? No, we're not going to. In fact, actually, our relations aren't too bad because today, jumping way ahead, today the United States and Vietnam have something in common. Both countries are concerned about the growing power of a neighbor of Vietnam, and that's China. Yes. Okay? So, March 1965, regular United States Marine Corps come in. They arrive at Da Nang. You see that? D-A and then N-A-N-G. It's a South Vietnamese city in the north. And they land on the shores, and they're like, man, we're going to get into battle. And they're full of enthusiasm. They're going to be like, I mean, these are enlisted soldiers. Marine Corps. We're going to get this thing done. Boom, boom, boom. This was in 1965. So this is the beginning of the United States increasing the number of soldiers there. Okay? We go up to 75,000. And then it's raised up to 125,000 in short order. Okay? Lyndon Johnson's like, we need to have these soldiers in there. I mean, like, how many people are we ultimately going to have? Let me check my notes here. I want to say it's in the upper high hundreds of thousands by the time we get out of there. Let's check our numbers. Oh, I don't have it right in front of me here. Yes, but hundreds of thousands of U.S. military personnel involved in the fight. We basically take it over, as I mentioned to you before. We take over the fight from the South Vietnamese. High casualties on both sides in our battles with the North Vietnamese and with the Viet Cong. And yet sometimes they can sneak their people in to Saigon and attack our embassy. Which looks like, are we winning this thing if they're actually getting in? Next time we will continue with the Vietnam War. And we'll wrap it. Oh my gosh, where time just flies by. And we'll wrap up and I'll give you some additional, I'll put the link for the video, the CNN Cold War video. Okay? All right, we actually got through most of this. We'll talk about the Tet Offensive and how that kind of blows up in the face of the United States in '68. Hoi, okay. Okay. Do-do-do-do.
Some people have soft voices to begin with, and not. Hey Daniel, the Green Day, they're pretty good at doing all the spirit stuff. I see much more stuff on Green Day. Yeah, like Green Day, I thought was there. There were several cowboys.
The problem with this week, this year's Spirit Week, is that I don't have anything. I don't have picture clothing.
So you didn't put the topic?
I don't have jerseys, clothing, like.
And then tomorrow it's like something.
I don't have neon either.
When you guys are done,
Fancy mask day.
your flight has been called.
I know.
Yeah. All boarding.
There
There you go.
Oh, Mary told me that she missed her meeting.
I sent her an email saying we can reschedule. She must not have.
Is she online?
I know, but you say
Yeah.
different presentation. Remember that?
Yeah.
I know. I should go for them to see it. How you guys doing?
Great.
Great.
I didn't want a sweatshirt. That actually was the one who was cold.
Come on.
It was like being here earlier.
Oh.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom for section 11.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, I usually think that was helpful.
Oh, no, I don't have
Civics exam shouldn't be a problem.
I would have to.
Did you talk to,
only if it can be
That is,
do you talk to someone for this?
What?
Do you talk to someone?
I don't know.
Oh,
Biology?
good question. You
Yeah.
did, you had to.
I think a lot of people like complain. Parents sent emails and stuff, so now they're gonna go watch the class.
Oh.
And the principal said that it's only the blue group that's having trouble, but the group, the green group is fine. Which doesn't make any sense.
That is so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Blevins, did you get my email?
A new one?
No. I just responded to your question about our meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll check it out. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Very good. Okay. I have a new computer, so people on Zoom can hear me now, but it won't, because it says I have an EGA, so I actually won't use this one. I have an HDMI, if I had a, you want HDMI? Oh, no, I guess not, because I did my own projector. Let's do that.
Oh, you're gonna project right on?
Yeah. Just gotta figure out. Yeah, big test, like a big.
Yeah, check the tires on the past meters, that's a good last, spring.
Oh, yeah, none of that stuff happened.
So, yeah, so I'm doing it right now with 11th graders and we're doing good.
Yeah, cause I didn't bring that HUD, so, I can't do the automatic. That's okay. It only has the one USB, so I have the projector in it, so I can't put the presentation to the phone in it. It's either in my house or alright. Okay. Okay, which is this is what I've had to do for 6. This is what I've been doing for a while, ever since they took away my ability to build that tower. Actually, do you need light for your grading?
No, that's fine, you're good.
You need that. That's one thing you need on the device is you have a little heads on it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go through this real quick, and then, well, not real quick. It's not gonna be real quick, I don't think. We're working towards helping you with this essential question maker. This is in Unit 2 for you guys. Because we're getting into things, we're actually formalizing everything and gonna start learning, how to pitch and how to make some kind of a schedule. Some of those, you guys were working on this project topic and problem question worksheet, and some of the fields on there said there will be a separate worksheet or something that you do that will help you generate the answer to this question. So one of them that every kind of project needs is an essential question. So this is in Unit 2, and this is something that you'll be getting points for just working towards filling these out. And then the big thing that you're working towards is right here in the project essential question below. So there's some thoughts to consider and this and that. In order to do it, we need to do this, go through this presentation here first about essential questions. So just as essential questions set the stage for higher level thinking. This is a big thing in lesson planning that you may see. I think in this rouse room, I'm pretty sure she has it. Sometimes the teacher just goes on you, but I think that like a guiding question over like, hey, for this unit, this is like the thing that we're the guiding question for this whole unit of study, kind of like the through line of motif for it all. So what is an essential question? What makes a question an essential question? Requires higher order thinking skills. Helps see how students are related. That's the whole thing. It's supposed to be all encompassing, kind of like an umbrella. Like everything we're doing kind of leads to this or falls into this category. A lot of times it'll cross discipline. Oops, I got this. Address big ideas and enduring concepts. No right or wrong answers. Open-ended. Actually, I guess we did that backwards. Right here. Questions that are there. Think about the concepts behind the skills and content. Think about good unit questions. Rainforest for saving. How do people and animals live in rainforests? How do rainforests live? Look at skills, content, and math. What is a rainforest? What lives in rainforests? Where are rainforests located? For example. I'm shaggy here. I'm trying to get back out to the point. It should lead to more things. So why use them? How can I make a difference? Promotes authentic learning, which encourages students to ask more questions. Students are more likely to become self-directed learners because they are interested in the answers. So hopefully if you ask the right kind of question, it will kind of spark you on a journey. At least another question and another question, and kind of your path. That's what's tough. It's a little bit tough for me too. I definitely am one of those people that likes to go like I said, I don't know if I shared in this class or other classes when I math quest like to go, like I'm going to these volleyball games, they don't have buses for us, we have to get ourselves there, and I'm not conversant in Idaho directions and things like that, so it's not just good enough to put in, where were we the other day, Victory Charter School, we went out there, we're going to Wilder tomorrow, never been those places, now I've never really been steered wrong by my GPS, but I don't just blindly follow it. I always have to like flip up and get to that part where it's like the point direction and look at all the different steps. I don't know. Are you the only driver in here? You drive?
I don't drive, but when we're on like a road trip or something, we don't just go with the first route that it gives us, because sometimes it's not the best way.
Yeah. Do you use GPS a lot? Like, you have pretty good sense of direction? You like always look at it online? You know, like which target you use, which target you use. So they're supposed to target higher order thinking skills. I don't know how, if you guys ever been introduced to Bloom's taxonomy, have you heard that term before? It's this idea that there's levels of thinking that starts with comprehension, which obviously is just, I read it, I get it. And goes from like comprehension, and you have knowledge, where you don't just kind of like understand it on the surface level, you actually kind of like know about it, you be able to explain it to someone else. And then it goes up and up and up to like evaluation and analysis and all this, where you can basically create your own products in that same field or realm of thinking. So each one obviously is a higher level. So these questions are supposed to be more than just kind of basic, easy to answer questions. They're supposed to be definitely integrated and exploratory questions. Requires comparison, synthesis, so bringing like and sometimes unlike things together, finding the connections between them, interpretation, evaluation, etc. Connect learning to other disciplines and other topics of study. ask questions that have been asked throughout history.